A small plane, two men, one mission, not just dangerous, but seemingly impossible by today's standards. This is the story of how a Las Vegas hotel owner chased a bizarre dream: to keep an airplane in the sky, not for hours, not for days, but for months without ever touching the ground. This wasn't just about fuel. This was a fight against exhaustion, freezing cold nights, and a fragile line between life and death. But here's the real question. Did these two pilots actually break the impossible record, or did their plane vanish forever into the endless blue sky? Let's take you back to a forgotten chapter of history. It was 1956. Vernon Bailey, a modest hotel owner in Las Vegas, had opened a hotel called Hacienda. Unlike the glittering casinos around it, this place was humble, designed for rural folks, everyday Americans. But the problem? It wasn't making much money. Vernon needed a bold idea to make his hotel famous, something outrageous, something headline-worthy. One day, an old war buddy, Army pilot Bob Timm, shared a wild suggestion. Let's break a world record. Let's fly a plane for months, nonstop. Bailey loved it. If they could keep a plane in the air longer than anyone else in history, the Hacienda Hotel would be on every front page in America. But could it actually be done? When airplanes were first invented, early records were measured in seconds. Soon, pilots and engineers began pushing those limits. By the 1920s, flight durations extended into hours and then days. The turning point came in 1923 when the U.S. Army figured out how to refuel a plane mid-air from another aircraft. From that moment on, records were shattered one after another. By 1949, two Navy pilots had kept a plane in the air for 46 days, and that stood as a milestone. But by the time Bob Timm got the idea in the late 1950s, it was no longer about machines. It was about human endurance. Could the body and mind survive such an ordeal? Timm got to work. He bought a Cessna 172 and hired a mechanic to heavily modify it. The co-pilot's seat was removed and replaced with a foam pad for sleeping. The back seat bench was replaced with an 8-square-foot storage area. A tiny sink was installed in the 4-foot-high cabin for sponge baths. Most importantly, a 95-gallon belly fuel tank was added. An electric winch was installed to pull up fuel hoses during mid-air refueling. A fold-out platform outside the co-pilot's door made it possible to refuel safely while flying just 20 feet above a moving truck. Then, in big bold letters, the plane was labeled Hacienda, free advertising in the sky. But there were setbacks. Timm's first co-pilot clashed with him constantly during test flights. Arguments, malfunctions, and even physical fights caused 3 failed attempts. Worse still, just as Timm struggled to get airborne, 2 other pilots broke the endurance record by flying 50 days over Dallas. That could have ended everything, but Timm wasn't giving up. By December 1958, with a new co-pilot named John Cook, the mission was finally ready. On December 4th, 1958, they took off from McCarran Field in Las Vegas. To prevent cheating, inspectors painted the tires with a white chalk-like paint. If the plane touched the ground, the paint would rub off, proof that the record had been faked. 12 hours in, it was time for their first mid-air refueling. A truck raced down a highway at 100 kilometers per hour. The Cessna flew low overhead, a winch cable dropped, a hose connected, and for 3 tense minutes, fuel flowed into the belly tank. One wrong move, and both men would die. And they had to repeat this at least 100 times. At first, they flew over Las Vegas, close to help in case of failure. But soon, they drifted over the desolate plains of California. At night, they faced freezing temperatures. During the day, low-altitude flying kept them warm, but brought new dangers: mountains, clouds, and unpredictable winds. They exercised, read books, and even celebrated New Year's Eve in the sky. Food, water, and engine oil were hoisted up during refueling. So were toiletries, including a camp toilet seat and waste bags, quietly dumped over deserted land. After 36 days, exhaustion was showing. One night, Bob Timm fell asleep at the controls. Autopilot kept them flying straight, but dangerously low. When he finally woke up, they were inside an unfamiliar canyon, just minutes away from a fatal crash. On day 39, disaster struck. The generator failed. No more lights, no more heater, no fuel pumps. A small wind turbine was sent up, but it only powered the radio. They now had to pump fuel manually. Refueling at night became terrifying, especially during a new moon. To help, the crew added a searchlight truck and tied a flashlight to the winch cable. The plane's systems began to fail. The fuel gauge broke. The tachometer stopped working. Carbon built up in the engine. But they pressed on. On January 23, 1959, at 3:52 p.m., they finally did it. 50 days in the air. A new world record. But instead of landing, they kept going. 14 days later, on February 7th, the plane was worn out. After 64 days, 22 hours, 19 minutes, and 5 seconds in the sky, they requested permission to land. A massive crowd was waiting. Journalists, officials, fans, and Timm's family all watched as the plane finally touched down. The white tire paint was still intact, proof they had never landed. Their record still stands. In 2015, the FAI officially discontinued manned endurance records. Too dangerous to attempt again. That means Timm and John Cook's feat is not just legendary, it's eternal. Their plane, the humble Cessna 172, still hangs above the baggage claim in Las Vegas McCarran Airport, whispering its story to those who look up. Thanks for watching. If you found this story incredible, hit the like button, subscribe for more forgotten legends, and tell us in the comments, would you dare spend 64 days in the sky?